At least 130 people were killed and hundreds more were wounded on November the 13th in Paris as a result of the terrorist rampage by ISIS. My condolences go out to all of those who lost their loved ones, their family, and their friends on that day. The shocking attack came in the context of a growing international aggression on the part of ISIS. Just the day before the Paris attacks, ISIS claimed credit for a twin suicide bombing in Beirut that killed at least 42 people. 2 weeks before that, ISIS claimed to have downed a Russian airliner over the Sinai Peninsula, killing all 224 people on board. ISIS has claimed the lives of more than 800 people this year outside its so-called caliphate. While the world has witnessed a strengthening ISIS, the president had a different interpretation. On the same day before the Paris attacks, the president said that ISIS was, quote, contained in Iraq and Syria. They may not be expanding their caliphate, but ISIS does not look contained to me. American and European intelligence officials are now saying that ISIS has a dedicated cell planning more terrorist attacks overseas. It's becoming clear that ISIS is not just a regional threat in the Middle East and that its overseas campaign of terror may have only just begun. It has been over a year since the president promised to, quote, degrade and ultimately destroy ISIS. U.S. airstrikes have done little to reduce the number of ISIS fighters. Foreign fighters are being replenished each day. There simply have not been enough airstrikes targeting vital ISIS locations. Right after the Paris attacks, the French, God bless them, didn't take them long to start hitting ISIS strategic locations in Syria, guided by the U.S. 2 weeks ago, we finally started to bomb trucks transporting oil for ISIS. Did not seem to happen earlier. The question is why. ISIS made $100 million through oil trafficking in 2014. Curious why there's only been one airstrike on the group's oil operation since November. And why don't we go after the oil fields that produce that oil that is being sold on the black market? Well, according to the former CIA director, there were environmental concerns about blowing up oil fields. So now we're fighting an environmentally correct war and trying to defeat ISIS. No wonder there's no success. The president himself was forced to cancel the train and equip program that cost $500 million after several false starts. Apparently, we need a strategy. We are failing in our efforts to counter foreign fighter travel. A majority of the Paris attackers were EU citizens who had traveled back and forth from fighting in Syria. The U.S. still does not have a national strategy to combat fighter travel. We also have yet to devise a real strategy to combat terrorist use of social media. ISIS uses social media to advertise its propaganda, radicalize, and recruit people all over the world. Right after the Paris attacks, ISIS supporters took to social media to praise the terrorist. How revolting is that? ISIS has released videos praising the attacks and calling for now attacks in New York and Washington, D.C. Administrations promised a strategy to counter online radicalization. That was in 2011. 4 years later, we're still waiting on the strategy. Not only that, we need to find better ways to deprive ISIS of their money. Their reign of terror is the result of having money to kill folks. Last year alone, ISIS made over $1 billion. They get money from ransom, killing endangered species in Africa, big dollar donors in the Middle East, taxing of locals that they control, and of course, blood oil. We need to start implementing a winning strategy against ISIS. Are we waiting to take the gloves off until ISIS commits a crime in the United States? It appears to me that we are on the defense, not the offense, when it comes to eliminating ISIS. The first step toward a better strategy is acknowledging that the one that we have now is really not enough. So we must be honest with ourselves, and we must do everything possible. The bottom line is, it is our obligation to protect the American people. Continuing to believe in a policy that doesn't fit the bill will continue to endanger us all. So what's the plan? What's the road to defeating ISIS?